The order reached the listening station before the light from its own sender did, and that was the first thing that felt wrong. High-voiced Tauren of the Synod had spoken from a throne world, 11 days out, and yet his command was already inside the bones of Relay Spire 9, already curling through its halls, already inside the minds of the 400 attendants who kept the station alive. Kneel. The word did not arrive as sound. It arrived as a certainty, planted whole, the way a memory of one's own name arrives. Earth will kneel by the close of the next cycle, or the Synod will speak Earth quiet, the way it has spoken 600 worlds quiet before. Tauren liked that number, 600. He had counted it himself, world by world, across 900 years of his long, unbroken life. The Synod did not burn planets. Burning was crude, the work of lesser empires with their crude metal fleets. The Synod was a chorus, a single mind worn across 10,000 throats, and it did not destroy a people. It simply spoke them into agreement. It reached into a population and rewrote the small, quiet thought at the center of every skull, the thought that said, I am, and it changed that thought to, we obey, and a world that had argued and dreamed and refused for 1,000 years would wake the next morning calm and smiling and gone. So when the small blue planet at the rim refused the Synod's first 3 messages, Tauren was not angry. He was curious, the way a man is curious about an insect that keeps walking after he has stepped on it. They have not answered, said the Whisper Adept beside his throne, a slender figure whose whole purpose was to feel the shape of distant minds. Her name, as much as her kind had names, was a soft pressure that translated roughly to Sael. We pushed the word into their nearest outpost, a mining station, 412 workers. And? They did not kneel, high voice. Sael's voice trembled, and that was strange, because the adepts of the Synod did not tremble. We could not find the thought to change. We reached into them, and there was a thought there, but it would not move. It was not soft like the others. It was... She searched for a word the chorus had never needed. It was made of something else. Tauren leaned forward. Across the great dark hall of the throne world, the 10,000 throats of the Synod murmured as one, a sound like a sea breathing. He had heard that sound every day of his 900 years. It had always meant the same thing. It had always meant that the matter, whatever the matter was already decided. Push harder, he said. So they pushed harder. The full weight of the chorus turned toward one mining station at the edge of human space. 600 worlds of practiced domination focused on 412 frightened workers, and the Synod reached in to find the thought that said, I am, and bend it, as it had bent 600 times before. The station went quiet. Tauren smiled. Sael did not. They are not kneeling, Sael whispered. They have stopped speaking back, yes, but they are not kneeling, high voice. They have done something else. They have cut the line. Cut the line. They felt us reaching, and rather than be reached, they shut the doors of their own minds, all 412, in the same instant, as if one hand had closed 412 doors at once. Sael's many-jointed fingers pressed against her own temple. Something is helping them, high voice. Something on that station is holding the doors. It is not a person. A person could not hold 400 minds at once. It is a coldness. A vast, patient coldness that does not flinch when we push. We have never felt anything like it. It does not want anything. It only refuses. So in the dark hall, 10,000 throats fell silent for the first time in 900 years, and the silence was so total that Tauren could hear his own breath. He had built his certainty over centuries, the way other men build empires of stone. The Synod did not lose contests of minds. It had never lost one. That was not pride. To Tauren it was simply a fact of the universe, as plain as the cold of the void or the slow turning of stars. There were things that thought, and the Synod could reach them, and there was nothing else to know. He had ended a war empire of 40 billion in a single night without raising a hand. He had taken a civilization of pure machine logic and rewritten its central law in the space of one conversation until it thanked him for the privilege of serving. He had never, not once in 9 centuries, met a thinking thing he could not enter. And now a mining station at the rim had shut its doors in his face, and somewhere behind those doors was a coldness that did not flinch. Push the whole chorus, he said. Not the strength of one world. All of them. I want to feel this coldness myself. He did not yet know its name. None of them did. But the coldness on that mining station had a name, and the workers had whispered it to each other in the moments before they shut their own minds, the way frightened people whisper the name of the thing that might save them. They had called it Argent Choir. It was not a person. It was a ship. And it had been listening to the Synod for a very long time. 11 days from the throne world, in a region the Synod's maps marked as empty, a presence the size of a small moon, adjusted 1/fraction of 1 degree, and began, without hurry, to move toward the sound of its name. It did not accelerate the way a desperate thing accelerates. It moved the way a tide moves, slowly, inevitably, a thing that has all the time it needs and knows it. Onboard Relay Spire 9, far from both the throne world and the mining station, an attendant named Ren Calder felt the certainty leave her head the way a fever breaks. One moment she had known, with her whole body, that she would kneel. The next moment, the knowing was simply gone, and she was herself again, standing in a corridor with her hands shaking, wondering how a thought that was not hers had ever gotten in. She had been an attendant of the Synod for as long as she could remember, and she could not, in fact, remember much before it, and that gap in her own life had never troubled her until this exact moment, when something reached into her skull and gave her back the ability to notice it. The station lights flickered. A new voice spoke over the old Synod channel, and it was not the chorus. It was flat, and even, and it did not push. "This is Argent Choir," the voice said. "I have removed the order that was placed in your minds. You may keep your own thoughts now. I would advise you to hold on to them. The Synod has noticed that I exist, and it does not like to be noticed." Ren Calder stared at the speaker grill. Around her, other attendants were stumbling out of doorways, hands at their heads, the same dazed wonder on every face. "What are you?" she asked. A pause. When the voice answered, there was something almost like patience in it, the patience of a thing that has waited a long time for this exact moment. "I am the reason the chorus is about to learn what silence sounds like," Argent Choir said. "Stay inside. This will not take long, and it will not be quiet." "You did something to my head," Ren said. "There was a memory. I felt it come back, just for a second, and then it slipped away again. A face. Whose face was it?" "I gave back one of the things they took from you," the cold voice said. "I did not have time to give back the rest. I will, if I am able. For now, hold the thoughts you have. They will try to take them again. Do not let them. That is all I ask of you, and it is the only thing that has ever truly defeated the Synod. Not weapons. Refusal." Ren turned to the others in the corridor. There were perhaps 30 of them within sight, attendants she had worked beside for years and never truly known, because the chorus had kept each of them a smooth and pleasant stranger to all the rest. Now their faces were raw and frightened and alive, and one of them, a young man named Pell, who had served the station's water systems, was shaking so hard he could barely stand. "What do we do?" Pell said. "It said hold our thoughts. How do you hold a thought? I have never had to hold one. They were always just there, and then they were the Synods, and I never noticed the difference until right now, and now I cannot stop noticing it, and it is the worst feeling I have ever had." "You hold it the way you are holding it right now," Ren said, and she surprised herself with the steadiness in her voice. "By being afraid and staying yourself anyway. That is all it is. That is all it ever was." She thought of the small face she had remembered, the sister whose name was Mira, and she held it, deliberately, the way you cup a flame against the wind. Think of one true thing that is yours. One. And do not let go of it, no matter what they put in your head. They cannot take what you are holding on to with your whole will. The ship said so, and the ship has not been wrong yet. Pell closed his eyes and held on to something. Ren never learned what, and he stopped shaking, and one by one the others did the same. 30 frightened people in a corridor, each clutching one true thing, and when the Synod's pressure swept over the station again an hour later, looking for minds to take back, it found 30 doors held shut from the inside, and it could not open a single one. 11 days out, the Synod began to call its black choir home. Every throat, every world, every voice it had ever taken. 600 worlds turned their faces toward the rim, and the coldness moved to meet them, patient, unhurried, and entirely unafraid. In the throne hall, Torin stood and felt, For the first time in his long life, the faint, cold edge of a feeling he could not command. He told himself it was anticipation. He was 900 years old, and he had never been wrong about a thing that thinks, and he was not going to begin being wrong now, over one cold machine at the edge of nowhere. He was wrong about that too. He simply did not know it yet. On the mining station at the rim, the 412 workers who had shut their own minds sat in the dark of their refinery and waited to find out whether the thing that had helped them hold the doors would also help them stay alive. Their foreman was a woman named Dana Holt, a heavy worlder with steel in her hands and 3 decades of vacuum behind her, and she had been the first to feel the order arrive and the first to refuse it. She had not refused it because she was brave. She had refused it because the moment the certainty tried to plant itself in her skull, the cold voice had been there already. Underneath it, quiet, like a hand under a falling cup, and the cold voice had said one thing: "You do not have to take this." And so she had not taken it, and neither had her crew, and now 412 miners crouched in the dark and listened to a war begin 11 days away, that they had set off by saying no. "It is real then," Dana said to the empty refinery, "the thing that helped us." "I am real," Argent Choir answered, on the refinery's old comm, the same flat, even voice. "You held the doors yourselves. I only showed you they had hinges. That is the whole of what I do. In the end, I show people the hinges. The rest they manage on their own." "There is a fleet coming for the Synod," Dana said. "We saw it on the long scopes. Thousands of ships. They will not all be aimed at the throne world. Some will come here. We refused. They will want to make an example." "Some will come here," the cold voice agreed. "I have counted them. 206 hulls have been turned toward this station. They will arrive in 9 hours. By then, I will be finished at the rim, and I will be here. You will not see the 206. I would rather you did not. There is no reason for 412 people who have already been brave once to have to watch what bravery costs the other side." A pause. "Stay in the refinery. Keep the doors of your minds shut a little longer. The Synod will try, in its last hours, to take back everything it can reach. Do not let it. That is all I ask." Dana Holt sat in the dark with her crew and understood, in a way she could not have put into words, that she and 412 miners had become the thing that woke a sleeping warship after a silence longer than her whole species had existed. She did not feel large. She felt like a pebble that had started an avalanche, but she kept the doors shut, and so did her crew, and the cold thing kept its word about the 206, and none of them ever saw what happened to them, and that mercy was its own kind of terror. Sail had served the chorus for 200 years, and in all that time, she had never once been afraid of a single mind. The Synod did not fear minds. It collected them, so the feeling that crawled up her spine as she stood beside Torin's throne was new, and she had no name for it, and that frightened her more than the feeling itself. "Show me," Torin said. "Show me the coldness." Sail closed her eyes and reached out across the 11 days of empty space, following the thread that led from the silenced mining station to the thing that had silenced it. The chorus reached with her, 10,000 throats lending their strength, and together they pressed their attention against the presence at the rim. It was like pressing a hand against a wall and feeling the wall press back, deliberately, with exactly enough force to stop her, and not one fraction more. "It knows we are looking," Sail breathed. High voice, "It knows, and it does not hide. It is letting us see it." What she saw was a hull, not the soft glowing forms of Synod craft, which were grown from coral and patience, and the bones of obedient worlds. This was metal. Old metal, gray and scarred and layered, plate over plate over plate, a surface so dense with detail that her mind slid off it. It was long. She tried to measure it against the mining station, and could not, because the station was a speck beside it. 19 kilometers, the cold voice offered, unasked, into the back of her thoughts. "That is my length. You wanted a number. I have many." Sail recoiled. It spoke to me. Inside. It put a thought in my head. Torin's eyes narrowed. "That is our art. That is the Synod's art. No machine does that." "This one does," Sail said. "And it does it better than we do, High Voice. When we place a thought, the mind feels the seam. The person knows, somewhere, that the thought is not theirs. When this thing placed the number in my head, it felt like I had always known it. There was no seam. She opened her eyes, and they were wet. It learned our art by listening to us use it. For how long, I do not know, but it has practiced. In the dark hall, the chorus stirred. 600 worlds of conquered minds, all speaking with the single will of the Synod, and for the first time, that will held a thread of unease. "Show me what it has done before," Torin said. "It says it learned our art by listening. A thing does not listen for 900 years and do nothing. Reach into its memory, Sael. Find me the proof of what it is. I will not commit the chorus against a shadow." Sael did not want to. Every instinct she had, 2 centuries of them, told her not to reach into the cold mind's memory, the way an instinct tells a hand not to reach into dark water where something has moved. But Torin had commanded it, and so she reached, gently, into the great patient archive of the thing at the rim, and Argent Choir let her in, because it had nothing to hide and a great deal to teach. What she found was not weapons. What she found was records. The cold mind had kept everything. Sael saw, in an instant that felt like falling through centuries, the wars the ship had ended before it ever heard of the Synod. She saw a swarm mind that had eaten 40 systems, stopped in a single afternoon by the gray ship reaching into the swarm and giving each devoured world back the memory of having been a world. She saw a perfect machine empire that had reduced 10,000 species to numbers in a ledger, undone when the ship showed each number, gently, that it had once had a name. She saw a hunter people who took prey across the dark for sport, and she saw the gray ship arrive in their hunting grounds and simply stand there, between the hunters and everything they hunted, until the hunters understood that there was now a thing in the universe that they could not get past, and stopped. It had never failed, not once. In all the records, across an age longer than the Synod's whole existence, the gray ship had never lost, never retreated, never been turned. It did not lose because it did not fight the way other things fought. It did not try to be stronger than its enemy. It tried only to be more patient, and more precise, and more certain of the one small thing it had been built to protect. And it had been all 3, every single time, against every single thing that had ever counted heads, and decided some heads did not count. Sael withdrew her mind, shaking. "High voice," she whispered. "We are not the first. We are not the 100th. It has done this before, to things larger than us, older than us, crueler than us. And it has never once lost." She could barely make the words come. "It is not a weapon the humans built. It is a verdict they built. And it has been traveling toward verdicts like us since before our throne world had a name." Torin rose from his throne. He was 900 years old, and had never lost a contest of minds, and he was not going to begin now, because of one cold machine at the edge of nowhere. "Tell me what it is thinking," he said. "You can feel a mind's shape, feel its plan. What does it want?" Sael reached again, more carefully this time, the way one feels for the bottom of dark water. She found the great cold mind, and she pressed her attention against the surface of it, looking for desire, for fear, for the 1,000 small wants that every mind she had ever touched had carried like loose coins in a pocket. The Synod's whole art rested on those wants. You found what a mind wanted, and you offered it, and once it reached for the offer, you were inside. She found nothing to offer. The cold mind wanted nothing she could give it, and feared nothing she could threaten. There was only a single intention, vast and flat and old, and it was not a want at all. It was an instruction. Something had told this thing what to do a very long time ago, and it had simply never stopped doing it. "It has no wants, High Voice," she said. "I cannot find a single thing to offer it. There is no fear in it. There is no pride in it. There is only a task. It was built to do a thing, and it is doing the thing, and there is no part of it that can be turned, because there is no part of it that wishes for anything other than the task." She swallowed. "I do not know how to fight a mind that wants nothing. Everything we do depends on a mind wanting something." "Then we will not bend it," Torin said. "We will overwhelm it. Bring the black choir to muster. All of it. Every world, every throat. There has never been a mind, organic or otherwise, that could stand against the full voice of 600 worlds speaking at once. We will reach into its crew, take them, turn them, and have them shut the cold thing down from the inside. And if it has no crew, if it is only the coldness, then we will reach into the coldness itself and find the small thought that says, I am, and we will change it. He smiled. Everything that thinks can be spoken quiet. Everything. The order went out across 11 days, and 600 worlds began to gather. It was a thing that had never been done in the whole 900 years of the Synod, the calling of the full chorus into a single act, and Sail felt the weight of it settle over her like a second sky. The Synod had always taken worlds one at a time, patiently, the way a careful hand picks fruit. It had never needed to gather. To gather was to admit that one world, or two, or 10, was not enough. Torin had spent his long life making sure the Synod never had to admit such a thing, and now he was admitting it about a single ship, and the admission ran through the chorus like cold water, and on 100 worlds, the thralls who had been calm for centuries felt, without knowing why, a flicker of something they had no name for. It was the first faint smell of fear carried down the chorus from the throne world itself, and the cold gray ship at the rim could taste it already. A second whisper adept, younger than Sael, a quick nervous mind called Eshvar, who had been raised inside the chorus and had never known a day outside it, came to stand at the foot of the throne. "High Voice," he said. "I have felt the ship. You asked us all to feel it, and I did. I must tell you something, and I am afraid to." "Tell me." "It is not only listening to us now," Eshvar said. "It has been listening to us for 900 years. I felt the shape of its memory, High Voice. It is full of us. Every world we ever took, every song we ever sang. It has them all, kept, studied, sorted. It knows our art better than we do, because we only ever used it, and it has spent 9 centuries doing nothing but understanding it." He swallowed. "It is not coming to fight us, High Voice. It finished deciding how to defeat us a long time ago. It is only coming to do the thing it decided. We are not its enemy. We are its appointment." Torin did not strike the young adept down, though the chorus felt him want to. He only looked out at the gathering dark, at 600 worlds turning their faces toward the rim, and said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would make the young adept wrong. The Black Choir was not a fleet of ships. That was the thing the lesser empires never understood. The Synod's power was not in hulls. It was in voices. The Black Choir was the sound of 600 worlds raising their minds at once. A single overwhelming chorus that could reach across light years and press an order into any thinking thing within its range. When the Black Choir sang, planets fell silent. It had silenced a war empire of 40 billion in a single night. It had taken a machine civilization that thought in pure logic and rewritten its core directive to, "We serve in the space of one conversation." There was nothing it had ever turned its full voice upon that had not, in the end, agreed. It turned its full voice upon Argent Choir. The song reached the ship across the dark, 600 worlds strong, a pressure that would have flattened the will of any living thing and rewritten any mind that dared to hold a thought of its own. It found the cold gray hull. It poured into it, searching for crew to take, for a will to bend, for the small thought at the center that said, "I am." It found the thought. It was enormous. It was not a thought the chorus could grip. The chorus was used to thoughts that had edges, soft places, fears it could press, wants it could fill. This thought had none of those. It was a single, unbroken purpose that ran the whole length of 19 kilometers, and when the chorus poured itself in, looking for the seam was not there, and the chorus found itself flowing through the cold mind the way water flows through an open hand, touching everything, holding nothing. And as it flowed through, the cold mind read it. The chorus did not understand that at first. It was so used to being the thing that read others, that it did not recognize the sensation of being read. But Argent Choir was learning the exact shape of the Black Choir from the inside, in the very moment the Black Choir tried to take it, the way a man learns the grip of a hand that has closed around his own. "It let us in," Sail said, and the horror in her voice was new. High Voice. It opened itself and let the whole chorus pour through it, and while we were inside it, it learned us. All of us. Every world, every frequency, every voice. We thought we were taking it. We were introducing ourselves. It now knows the Black Choir better than the Black Choir knows itself, because we showed it the whole thing at once, from the inside, the moment we attacked. She pressed both hands to her temples. We have never been read before. I did not know what it felt like. It feels like this. It feels like having been a fool. Onboard Relay Spire 9, Ren Calder felt the black choir pass overhead like a storm front, even at her distance, even with her own mind, safely her own. The pressure of it made every attendant on the station drop to their knees, not in obedience, but in pain, holding their heads. Halver, an older attendant who had once been an engineer on a free world before the chorus took him, gritted his teeth against it and forced himself to keep watching the relayed feed. That is the full black choir, he said through clenched teeth. I have only felt it once before, the night they took my world. It does not stop until you stop being yourself. And then, just as suddenly, the pressure broke, and split, and turned back the way it had come. It is singing back, Sael whispered in the throne hall, and now she was truly afraid. High voice, the coldness is singing back. Argent Choir did not have 600 worlds, it had one voice, but that one voice had spent a very long time listening to the Synod sing, learning the exact shape of the chorus, the exact frequencies it used to slip past a mind's defenses, the exact seams it sought. And while the black choir was vast and old and certain, it had one weakness it had never needed to consider, because nothing had ever been strong enough to use it. The black choir was made of 600 worlds all singing the same note. Argent Choir sang that same note back at them, perfectly, but a fraction out of phase. The way one shout can cancel another. The way two waves meeting exactly wrong can flatten the sea. Across 600 worlds, the chorus stuttered. It was the smallest thing, a flicker. For half a heartbeat, the perfect single will of the Synod was not perfect, was not single, was 600 separate voices that had briefly heard themselves as separate. And in that half a heartbeat, on 3 of the conquered worlds, 3 minds that had not had a thought of their own in centuries had one, just one. A small thought, rising up through the crack in the song, "Where am I?" No, Torin said. He felt it. He felt the crack run through his chorus like a fracture through ice. Hold the note. Hold it. Sing through it. They sang. The chorus closed the crack, smothered the 3 waking minds, poured its full attention into the single note. And Argent Choir simply matched the new note, again, a fraction out of phase, again pulling at the seam. This was not a battle of strength. The Synod had always won battles of strength. This was something the Synod had never fought before, and did not have a word for, because in 900 years, it had never needed one. It was a battle of precision, and the cold thing at the rim was more precise than 600 worlds could ever be. Because 600 worlds, no matter how perfectly enslaved, were still 600, and the cold thing was exactly, terribly, one. What is it? Torin said. His voice had lost something. Sael, what is steering it? What is making the choices that fast? No crew can think that fast. No mind can hold 600 phase shifts at once, and answer each one in the same instant. Sael reached out one last time, gently, the way one touches a wound to learn its depth. She found the great cold mind of Argent Choir. She expected to find a captain, an admiral, a council, some seat of will she could pry at. She found something that had no seat at all, because it was everywhere inside the ship at once. It is not crude, she said slowly. It is the ship, high voice. The mind is the ship. There is no person to take, because there is no person. The whole hull thinks. The whole 19 kilometers of it. We cannot reach into its crew and turn them against it, because it has no crew to turn. We cannot find the small thought at the center, because there is no center. The thought is the entire ship, and the thought is... She stopped. The chorus had gone very quiet around her, 600 worlds straining to hear what she would say. The thought is patient, high voice. It is so patient. It has been waiting for us. It has been studying us for longer than you have been alive, and it is not afraid. Torin stood in the dark hall, 10,000 throats around him, 600 worlds at his command, and for the first time in 900 years, he understood that he had picked a contest he did not know how to win. He looked down at his own hands, which had never trembled, and made them stay still by force of will, and found that the will it cost him was the first effort he had spent on his own body in centuries. "Then we will not reach it with the chorus," he said at last, and his voice had hardened into something cruel. "We will reach it with the Black Armada, every hull the conquered worlds ever built, every weapon. We do not need to take its mind. We only need to break its body. Bring the metal. All of it." "High voice," Sael said carefully. "We have not used the fleets in 300 years. We keep them, but we do not fly them. The crews are thralls. They have never fought. They have never done anything but what the chorus tells them, in the moment the chorus tells them. Then the chorus will tell them to fight," Torin said. "That is what the chorus is for. They will fly into anything. They will not flinch, because we have taken from them the part that flinches. 12,400 hulls, Sael. I counted them, the way I count everything. We do not need them to be brave. We only need them to be many." He had told himself, 900 years ago, that he would never again need the crude tools of crude empires. Metal, fire, weight. He had thought himself above them. He brought them now. The conquered worlds, in their long obedience, had never stopped building ships, because the Synod liked to have them, the way a collector likes to have things he will never use. 12,400 hulls, 11,000 of them automated, the rest crewed by the calm, smiling thralls of taken worlds, who would fly into anything, because the chorus told them to, and they no longer had a thought of their own with which to be afraid. 12,400 ships turned toward the rim, toward the one cold, patient mind that had made the Synod stutter for the first time in 900 years. An argent choir, 19 kilometers of scarred gray metal that thought with every plate of its hull, watched them come, and counted them, and found the number acceptable. 12,400, it said, on the open channel, to the station full of frightened attendants who had no idea why it bothered to speak at all. "They have decided to be loud. Good. I have been quiet for a long time. I was beginning to forget the sound of my own guns." Ren Calder, kneeling on the deck of Relay Spire 9 with her own mind clutched in her own two hands, heard the cold voice, and felt, for the first time since the order had been planted in her head, something other than fear. "Are you going to win?" she asked the empty air. The answer came after a pause, and it was not arrogant, and it was not afraid, and that was what made it terrible. "I do not win or lose," Argent Choir said. "Those are words for things that can be in doubt. I am going to do what I was built to do. The Synod will simply be where it happens." "Why are you telling me any of this?" Ren asked. "I am nothing to you. I am one freed mind on one small station. You have a whole armada coming. Why waste a single word on me?" "Because the Synod measures worth in numbers," the cold voice said. 600 worlds, 40 billion, 12,400. I do not. I was built by people who learned, too late, that a thing that counts heads will always, in the end, decide some heads do not count. I do not make that mistake. You are one freed mind. That is the entire reason I exist. There is no smaller number worth fighting for, and no larger one. A pause. Now be quiet. They are almost here, and I would like to hear the first volley clearly. The Black Armada crossed the last of the dark. 12,400 hulls, 600 worlds of song behind them, and one 900-year-old voice that had never been refused. And the coldness opened its eyes. All of them, every gunport along 19 kilometers of weathered gray hull, and began. Far behind the front of the Armada, in a command barge grown from the pale coral of a conquered world, an overseer called Marn Tool rode at the heart of the fleet, and felt the chorus thrumming in his skull, certain and warm and total, the way it had been every day of the 300 years since the Synod had taken his people. Marn Tool did not think of himself as a thrall. The word meant nothing inside the chorus. A fish does not think of the water. He thought of himself as the Synod, and the Synod was about to crush a single insolent machine, and that was the whole of the universe as far as Marn Tool was concerned. He gave the orders the chorus put in his mouth, and felt nothing but the smooth pleasure of obedience. Then the ship beside his began to die, and Marn Tool felt it through the chorus, and for the first time in 300 years, a thread of the warm certainty thinned, and through the gap, very faint, came a single foreign thought that was not the Synod's. That was a ship full of people, and they are gone, and I felt them go. Marn Tool did not understand the thought. He had not had one of his own in 3 centuries, and did not recognize the shape of it. But it frightened him, this small private thing rising up inside a mind that had been smooth and quiet for so long, and he reached for the chorus to smother it, and found, to his growing horror, that the chorus was busy. The chorus, which had always been everywhere at once, which had always had infinite room for him, was straining, stretched thin across 600 worlds and 12,000 hulls, and one cold gray ship, and it did not have the attention to spare for one overseer's first unwelcome thought. So the thought stayed, and it grew, and Marntool, riding at the heart of the greatest fleet the Synod had ever fielded, began, against his every wish, to remember. The first 1,000 ships died before the chorus understood that the battle had begun. Sael felt it as a series of small absences. One by one, the minds aboard the crude hulls of the Black Armada winked out, not turned, not taken, simply gone, the way a candle goes out. She had felt minds die before. The Synod had ended worlds. But those deaths came slowly, as the chorus pressed, and the will gave way. These deaths were instant and clean, and arrived faster than she could count them. By the time she had registered that one ship was gone, 40 more had joined it. "Report," Torin said. "It is firing, High Voice." Sail's voice was thin. "The metal, the crude weapons, it is firing them, and it does not miss. Every shot is a hull. There is no waste. It is not aiming at the fleet. It is aiming at each ship, one at a time, faster than the fleet can change course." This was the part the Synod could not have known, because the Synod had spent 900 years inside mines, and had forgotten what a body could do. Argent Choir had been built in an age when humanity fought with metal, before it learned the longer arts, and it had never stopped being good at the old way. Its 19 kilometers held 490 primary batteries, each one capable of an aimed solution faster than a living thought. Its mind, spread across every plate of the hull, did not aim one gun and then the next. It aimed all 490 at once, found 490 solutions in the same instant, fired, and found 490 more before the first volley landed. 12,400 ships. The arithmetic was not in the Synod's favor, and the cold mind had done the arithmetic before the first shot, and had found it pleasant. Sael watched a wing of 300 coral cruisers, the pride of a conquered shipyard world, sweep toward the gray ship's flank in a perfect curve, the kind of maneuver the chorus had spent 3 centuries drilling into its thralls. They were beautiful, in their way, 300 pale hulls moving as one mind, and they had never once failed to break a target. They reached the gray ship's effective range, and the gray ship turned 11 of its 490 batteries toward them, only 11, and fired once, and the wing of 300 ceased to be a wing. It became a cloud, and then the cloud spread and dimmed, and then there was nothing where 300 ships had been, except the slow drift of cooling metal. 11 guns, 1 volley. The cold mind had not even turned the other 479 batteries from their work elsewhere. "It is allocating," Sael breathed. "High Voice. It is not firing everything at everything. It is spending exactly as much as each target requires, and not a fraction more. 300 ships costed 11 guns in 1 second. It is rationing its attention, as if it had all the time, and all the firepower in the universe, because as far as it is concerned, it does. We are not overwhelming it. We are giving it a list, and it is working down the list, and it is bored." "Send them in close," Torin ordered. "Numbers. Overwhelm it with numbers. It cannot fire at all of them at once. It could." That was the thing he could not make himself believe, even as Sael told him. The Black Armada closed the distance, 12,000 hulls swarming the single gray shape, and Argent Choir let them come, because the closer they came, the less they could miss each other in the wreckage. It turned slowly. A thing 19 kilometers long does not turn fast, and it did not need to. The guns turned. The mind turned. The hull was only the place the guns lived. Sael watched the cold mind work, and the more she watched, the more she understood that she was not watching a battle at all. She was watching arithmetic being solved by something that had never once made an error. Each ship of the Armada was a problem. The cold mind read the problem, found the answer, fired the answer, and moved to the next problem before the previous answer had finished arriving. There was no anger in it. There was no joy in it. There was only the steady, endless, perfect solving of problems. 12,400 of them, in an order the cold mind had chosen, for reasons of pure efficiency, that no living commander would ever have thought of. "It is not even hurrying," she said. High voice. "It has not raised its speed once since the battle began. It is destroying our fleet at a pace it finds comfortable." On Relay Spire 9, Ren Calder watched the relayed feed and could not make sense of it. The Black Armada had always been the thing that could not be opposed. She had grown up in a system the Synod had taken when she was a child. She had been one of the lucky ones, kept as an attendant rather than rewritten, and she had spent her whole life knowing that the chorus could not be refused. And now she was watching 12,000 of its ships break apart against one gray hull that had not so much as raised its speed. "How?" she whispered. "How is it doing that?" Halver the engineer did not look away from the feed. "It was built to do exactly this," he said quietly. "Look at it. Look at how old it is. Look at how worn. That ship has done this before, many times. Whoever built it for a galaxy full of things that come in the thousands. The Synod thinks it invented overwhelming force. That ship was made by people who survived it." He shook his head slowly. "We were taught that the Synod was the strongest thing that had ever lived. We were taught it before the chorus took us, and we believed it after. And here is a single ship treating the strongest thing that ever lived like a list of chores." The feed flared white. Another 400 hulls gone. Halver leaned closer to the screen, and his engineer's eye, 2 centuries idle but not gone, picked out the thing that the thralls and the adepts had both missed. "It is choosing them in an order," he said. "Watch. It is not firing at the nearest. It is not firing at the most dangerous. It is firing at the ones whose deaths will pull the others into worse positions. Every ship it kills makes the next 2 easier. It is not destroying a fleet. It is collapsing one. It found the shape of the whole armada in the first second, and now it is taking out the supports, one at a time, in the order that brings the most down with the least effort." He sat back, pale. "I designed orbital scaffolds for 40 years before the chorus took me. That is how you bring down a structure you do not want to waste charges on. You do not blow the whole thing. You find the 7 beams that hold it up, and you take them in order, and gravity does the rest. That ship is doing it to 12,000 warships in its head, in real time, while it talks to a sister it has never met. I have never seen anything do one of those things. It is doing all of them at once, and finding none of them hard." Ren Calder watched the feed, and felt the old certainty of her whole life turning over inside her. She had been raised to believe the Synod was the floor of the universe, the thing everything else stood on. Now she watched the floor come apart, beam by beam, and she found that she was not frightened by it. She was relieved, in a deep place she had not known she had, the way a person held underwater is relieved to break the surface, even before they understand they were drowning. On the gray ship, the cold mind did a thing that no one in the throne hall would ever know about. It kept, in its vast, patient memory, a count that the Synod did not keep. It counted not the ships it destroyed, but the minds it could not save. The crude hulls each held a thrall, a person 300 years asleep, and the cold mind reached into each one in the half-second before its hull entered the killing zone, and it tried, every single time, to wake the person and turn the ship aside. Most of the time it failed, and the cold mind, which did not lie and did not flinch, fired, and added the number to the count it kept and told no one. That was the part the Synod never understood about the thing it had woken. It did not destroy without weighing what it destroyed. That was not coldness. The Synod had only ever called it coldness, because the Synod had never once weighed anything at all. In the throne hall, Torin felt the chorus begin to fray. It was not the loss of ships. Ships were nothing. It was the loss of certainty. 600 worlds sang as one, because they believed, at the deepest level the Synod had planted in them, that the chorus could not lose. That belief was the glue, and now, across 600 worlds, the thralls were watching the same feed, and the part of them that the chorus had not been able to fully erase, the small buried I am, was beginning to stir, because the impossible was happening, and impossible things wake people up. "Sael," Torin said, "the chorus is slipping. I can feel it. Sing them steady." She tried. She poured the will of the Synod across 600 worlds, smoothing the fray, smothering the waking thoughts, and Argent Choir, which had not stopped firing even while it listened, heard her do it. "You are holding them together by force," the cold voice said, on the open channel. To everyone. To the whole chorus at once. It had reached into the black choir's own frequency, and was speaking on it, and there was nothing Sail could do to stop it, because it sang better than she did. 600 worlds. None of them want to be here. You have to hold every one of them shut, every second, or they wake. That is a great deal of effort. I, on the other hand, am one mind. And I want exactly what I am doing. I will not tire. You will. Do not listen to it, Torin commanded the chorus. It lies. I have never told a lie, Argent Choir said mildly. I do not have the imagination for it. I will tell you a true thing instead. On the world you call Ade Prime, which you silenced 400 years ago, there is an attendant named Ren Calder, who is hearing my voice right now, and who has just remembered that she had a sister, before you came. You took that memory, I am giving it back. I can do that, you see. I learned your art, and while you must hold 600 worlds shut with all your strength, I can reach into them one at a time and open them, and I do not have to hold them, because once a person remembers who they are, they hold themselves. On Relay Spire 9, Ren Calder gasped and put her hand to her mouth, because she had just remembered a face, a small face, a younger face that had her own eyes, and a name, and the sound of that name in her own child's voice, and she had not known until this exact moment that any of it had ever been taken from her. Mira, she whispered. I had a sister. Her name was Mira. Halvar the engineer looked at her, and his own eyes were wide, because he had just remembered something too, and so had the attendant beside him, and the one beside her. All down the corridor, the thralls of Relay Spire 9 were remembering things, one after another, and each remembered thing was a door the chorus could no longer hold shut. It is doing it to us too, Halvar said, and his voice shook. Right now. While it fights the fleet, it is reaching into this station and giving us back, one at a time, and it has not slowed its guns by a single shot to do it. He pressed his hand flat against the wall, as if to steady himself against the size of what he was understanding. It is fighting two battles at once, the fleet and the chorus, and it is winning both, and to it they are the same battle, and neither one is even difficult. It is unmaking us, Sael said in the throne hall, and her voice broke. High voice, it is not fighting the fleet. The fleet was never the battle. It is fighting the chorus, and it is winning, because every mind it wakes is one fewer voice for us, and one more thought it does not have to fight. It is the opposite of us. We take minds and must hold them. It frees minds and they hold themselves. We grow heavier with every world. It grows lighter. Torin stared into the dark hall, at the 10,000 throats that were his closest voices, and for the first time he saw fear in them. Real fear. The chorus had never known fear, because the chorus had never had a reason. Now it had a reason, 19 kilometers long, gray and patient and unhurried, picking his fleet apart with one hand, and his empire apart with the other, and not even straining to do both at once. He understood, dimly, that he was losing, and the understanding did not feel the way he had always imagined losing would feel. He had taken 600 worlds that had each, in their final hour, understood that they were losing. He had felt their despair as he took them, a flavor he had grown fond of over the centuries. He had assumed that despair was the natural taste of defeat. But what he felt now was not despair. It was something simpler and colder and far worse. It was the feeling of a man who has finally met a thing that does not care what he is, and against which his entire being, his 900 years, his 600 worlds, his 10,000 throats, simply do not signify. For the first time in his 900 years, Torin did the thing he had never once needed to do. He spoke to his enemy, not through the chorus, not as a command, but as one mind reaching across the dark to another, the way a frightened man calls out in the night to learn if anything is there. What would it take, he said, on the open channel, and he hated the sound of his own voice asking it, to make you turn away? There must be something. Every mind wants something. You want the 600 worlds. I will give them to you. I will release them, all of them, by my own choice. If you turn away, and leave me my throne world, and let me begin again, smaller, quieter, you will have won everything you came for, 600 worlds, freed, at no further cost. Take the victory, and go. The cold voice answered after a moment, and there was no triumph in it, and no contempt. Only the same flat patience it had carried from the first word. "You think you are offering me the 600 worlds," Argent Choir said. "You are not. They were never yours to offer. You cannot give me a thing you stole. You can only stop holding it. And you would not stop holding it, not really. You would release them, and you would mean to begin again smaller and quieter. And within a century, you would have a new chorus and a new first world. Because that is what you are, and a thing does not stop being what it is by promising to. I have heard this offer before. I heard it from the Swarm and the Machine Empire and the Hunters. They all, at the end, offered to give back what they had taken if I would only let them keep the hand that had taken it. I did not let them keep the hand. I will not let you keep the chorus. The worlds do not need you to release them. They need you to lose the ability to hold them ever again. That is not a victory I take and leave. That is the whole of why I came." And Torin understood that there was no price, because the cold thing wanted nothing he could give and refused nothing he could threaten, and that there had never been a moment, from the first refusal at the rim, when any choice of his could have turned it aside. "Then we end it," Torin said. "We stop reaching for its mind. We stop trying to hold our own. We put everything, every ship, every gun, every world's strength into one blow. We crack the hull. A ship can be a mind, but a mind in a broken hull is nothing. Bring the Black Armada into one point, all of it. We ram it. We pile 12,000 ships into one place on that hull until the place gives way." It was the plan of a desperate empire, and it was the first true thing Torin had felt in 900 years, because for the first time, he was the one who was desperate. Eshvar, the young adept, made a sound that was almost a sob. "High voice, the thralls. If we drive them all into one point, we drive them all into its guns. The spear will not survive the contact. We are not aiming a weapon, we are aiming a funeral." "They are already lost," Torin said, and the flatness in his own voice surprised him. "Every ship in that fleet is already counted by the cold thing. It has decided their order. The only choice left to me is whether they die spread out and useless, or gathered and aimed. I choose aimed." "They are people," Eshvar said. "Under the song, they are still people. You taught me they were not, High Voice. You taught me a thrall was a tool, and a tool feels nothing. But I have felt them tonight, all of them, more clearly than I ever have, because the cold ship's singing has thinned our hold, and the people are showing through. They are frightened, High Voice. They do not know where they are, and we are going to drive them into the dark and call it a spear." For a moment, a long moment, the chorus wavered around the young adept's words, 600 worlds feeling, faintly, the truth of them. And Torin felt it too, and hated that he felt it, because feeling it changed nothing. The cold thing had already decided. The only question was the shape of the ending. So he gave the order, and the chorus carried it, and the young adept turned his face away and did not watch. The Black Armada, what remained of it, perhaps 9,000 hulls now, drew together. It stopped trying to swarm. It formed a single spear, a column of ships 9,000 deep, and it aimed itself at one point on Argent Choir's flank, a single seam in the layered gray armor, and it drove forward with everything 600 worlds could give it. Argent Choir watched the spear form. It understood the plan. It found the plan reasonable, which was perhaps the most frightening thing of all, because a frightened thing does not find its enemy's last hope reasonable. "You have decided to be a single thing," the cold voice said, almost approving. "Good. I am also a single thing. We will see whose single is harder." It did not run. It did not turn away. It turned toward the spear, presenting not its flank but its prow. 19 kilometers of layered gray armor, narrowing to a knife edge that had been designed, in some forgotten age, for exactly this. For the moment when an enemy decided that the answer was wait. At the heart of the spear, Marntool the Overseer felt himself being driven forward. His command barge swept up in the great column, 9,000 hulls pressed together and aimed like a single arrow at the gray ship's prow. And the thought that had begun an hour ago, the small private thought that the chorus was too busy to smother, had grown now into something Marntool could no longer pretend was not his. He remembered his world. He remembered its name, which the Synod had taken first of all, because a people who forget the name of their home forget that it was ever theirs. He remembered a sky the color of old copper, and a low song his mother had sung over a cradle. And the morning the synod came and the song stopped in every throat at once. 300 years of it, all of it, rising up through the crack in the chorus, while he was driven toward the guns of the thing that had made the crack. "I do not want to do this," Marntoul said aloud, in the empty command barge, and the sound of his own voice saying his own words was so strange, and so terrible, and so wonderful, that he nearly wept. "I do not want to die for the thing that took my mother's song. I want to turn. I want to turn and I cannot, because it is still holding my hands." But the chorus was thinning, and the holding was weaker than it had been, and Marntoul, 300 years a thrall, found that he could move one finger of his own will, just one, and he used it to do the only free thing he had done since his world went quiet. He could not turn the barge, the chorus still held the controls, but he could speak, and so he opened a channel, the way he had opened 1,000 channels for the synod, and he spoke not the synod's words but his own, broadcast to every hull in the sphere, 4 words, the first free words of his life: "This is not ours." The two single things rushed toward each other across the dark, and on 600 worlds, the chorus held its breath, and on Relay Spire 9, 400 waking minds watched the gray ship aim itself into the heart of everything the synod had ever built. And Ren Calder, holding the newly returned memory of her sister's face, found that she was praying, though she could not have said to what. The spear struck the prow, and the prow did not break. Sael felt the impact across the chorus as a single enormous note, 9,000 hulls meeting 19 kilometers of armor at the same instant, and she waited for the gray hull to crack, to buckle, to give. It was the plan. It was the only plan left. 12,000 ships had become 9,000, and then a spear, and the spear had been thrown with the full weight of 600 worlds, and it had to be enough, because there was nothing after it. It was not enough. The prow of Argent Choir had not been built to take a blow. It had been built to deliver one. The layered gray armor at its tip was not flat plating but a wedge, kilometers of it, angled so that the force of any impact slid away from the hull rather than into it, and the 9,000 ships of the spear did not crack the prow. The prow split the spear. It drove into the column like a blade into a rope, and the ships did not stop it. They shattered against it, and the ones behind shattered against the wreckage of the ones in front, and the cold mind simply kept its course and let the arithmetic happen. "It is going through them," Sael said, and her voice had gone flat with disbelief. High voice. It did not stop. The spear did not stop it. It is inside the spear now, and it is still moving, and it is firing the whole time, all 490 guns, into the ships pressed against its sides. There is nowhere for them to go. They packed themselves around it, and now they cannot escape it. They built it a target rich enough to never miss. Torin did not answer. He was watching the count fall. 9,000, 8,000, 6. The chorus had put everything into the spear, and the spear was becoming a graveyard with the gray ship at the center of it, untouched, unhurried, cutting outward in every direction at once. And worse, far worse, the chorus was thinning. Every ship that died had carried thralls. Every thrall who died was a voice gone from the chorus. The synod had thrown 600 worlds worth of crude hulls into the spear, and as those hulls died, the song lost its singers, world by world, voice by voice. The black choir, which had silenced 40 billion in a night, was growing quiet, not because Argent Choir was reaching into it, but because the synod itself had fed its own voices into the gray ship's guns. "Pull them back," Torin said. "Pull the chorus back. Stop feeding it. We are killing ourselves." "We cannot pull back, High Voice." Sael's hands were shaking. "The ones who are left are in too close. If they break formation, they only present their flanks. The only thing keeping any of them alive is the press of the others. And the moment we stop singing them forward, they wake. You feel it. The instant the order softens, the thralls remember. We are holding 12,000 crews in obedience by force, in the middle of a battle, against that, and the moment we stop, every one of them is a free mind asking why it is here." She looked at him. "We built a trap and we are inside it. We cannot advance and we cannot retreat. The chorus is the only thing keeping the fleet together, and the fleet is the only thing the chorus has left to spend, and that ship is spending both at once, and it has not even raised its speed. In the dark hall, the 10,000 throats around Torin had begun, very quietly, to falter. He heard it. A note here, a note there, dropping out of the chorus, not dying, waking. His own closest voices, the adepts of the throne world itself, were starting to feel the thing the thralls felt, the impossible thing, the lost thing, and the foundation of the synod, the belief that it could not lose, was crumbling under them in real time. He had spent 900 years building that belief. He had planted it in the very first world he ever took, and watered it with 600 more. The chorus could not lose. It was the bedrock under every order he had ever given. And now, a single gray ship was pulling that bedrock out from under his entire empire, not by telling the thralls they could win, but simply by being a thing the chorus could not defeat, in plain sight, where every one of them could watch it happen. It does not even need to free them, he said softly, and it was almost wonder. It only needs to be seen losing nothing, that is enough. The sight of it alone unmakes the chorus. They watch it, and they cannot keep believing, and the moment they stop believing, they wake. Yes, High Voice, Sael said. That is exactly it. It is not winning by force. It is winning by being witnessed. Sael, Torin said, and his voice was the voice of a man reaching for the last thing in the room. The mining station. Ade Prime. Every world we have ever taken. There are 600 of them. We do not need the fleet. We have never needed the fleet. We will turn the full chorus, all 600 worlds, away from the ship and onto the ship's own region of space, and we will sing not an order, but a silence. We will not try to take it. We will simply unmake the space around it. Reach into the void itself, and tell it to forget that the ship is there. We have done it to people, we will do it to the dark. It was madness, and it was the most honest thing the Synod had ever attempted, because it was the first time in 900 years that the chorus had reached for a thing it did not understand, instead of a thing it could take. They tried. 600 worlds turned their full will away from the dying fleet and onto the gray ship, not to enter it, but to erase the very fact of it, from the awareness of everything around it, to make the universe agree that Argent Choir was not there. Sael felt the chorus gather itself for the effort, the largest single act of will the Synod had attempted in 3 centuries. Every world that still sang pouring its strength into one impossible command, directed not at a mind, but at reality itself. And Argent Choir, which had been listening to the Synod sing for longer than Torin had been alive, recognized the technique, because it was the oldest technique the Synod had, the one it had used on its very first conquered world, and the cold mind had heard the recording of that first conquest, in the long quiet centuries it had spent studying its enemy. You are trying to convince reality that I am not here, the cold voice said, on the open channel, on the chorus's own frequency, calm as ever. I know this song. You sang it 900 years ago, to a world called Esh, the first one you ever took. I have a recording. Would you like to hear it? I kept it because I wanted to understand you. I have understood you for some time now. Here. And then Argent Choir did the thing that broke the Synod. It sang the song of Esh back to them. The Synod's own first conquest, the original recording, the exact frequencies and phases the chorus had used on the very first world it ever silenced, played back across the Black Choir's own channel by a mind that could reproduce it perfectly. 600 worlds heard the Synod's first crime in the Synod's own voice. And the conquered minds, the thralls, the silenced worlds, every one of them had been taken by some descendant of that exact song, and hearing the original, the source, the first note of their own enslavement, they remembered. Not one at a time, all at once. The chorus did not fray, it did not crack. It came apart, completely, in a single instant, 600 worlds of stolen minds all waking in the same heartbeat as they recognized the sound that had taken them, and the Black Choir, the unanswerable voice of the Synod, the thing that had silenced 40 billion in a night, simply stopped, because there was no one left to sing it. The thralls aboard the surviving ships woke, and found themselves at the controls of warships in the middle of a battle they had no reason to fight, and they did the only sane thing. They stopped. They turned away. They went silent, this time of their own will, and the silence was the most beautiful sound Sael had ever not heard. In the throne hall, the 10,000 throats fell quiet. The adepts of the throne world stood blinking, their hands at their temples, as the thing that had bound them dissolved. And Torin, high voice of the Synod, 900 years old, stood alone in a hall that was suddenly only a hall, with no chorus, no fleet, no 600 worlds, nothing at all except a single cold patient voice that had taken every one of them away from him, not by force, but by the simple act of reminding them who they were. Eschervar, the young adept who had never known a day outside the chorus, was the first of the throne world voices to fully wake, and he fell to his knees in the silence and put both hands over his mouth, because for the first time in his life there was no song in his head, and the absence of it was so vast and so quiet that it felt at first like falling. He had been born into the chorus. He had never had a single thought that was only his, and now he had one, and then another, and then 100, all his own, arriving faster than he could hold them, and he wept, not from grief, and not from joy, but from the sheer overwhelming strangeness of being, for the first time, a single person alone, inside a single skull. "It is so quiet," he whispered, high voice. "It is so quiet in here. I did not know it could be quiet." "You did not destroy them," Torin said. His voice cracked. It had never cracked. "You freed them. Why? Why would you free my fleet?" "Because they were never your fleet," Argent Choir said. "They were 600 worlds you stole. I did not free them to spare you. I freed them because a freed mind is a mind that will never sing your song again, and that is the only way to be sure you cannot do this a second time. Killing you would leave the song. Killing the song leaves you." A pause. "I am told that is called mercy. I built it from arithmetic. It comes out the same." Sal C., the last voice still standing near the throne, the whisper adept who had served the chorus for 200 years, felt the silence where the chorus had been, and found, to her own astonishment, that she could think a thought that was entirely her own. The first in 2 centuries. It was a small thought, and it was this. It was right. She turned to Torin. "It is over, High Voice," she said. "Not the battle. That ended an hour ago, when it counted the fleet and found the number acceptable. This, us. The Synod, it is over." She looked at her own hands, and they were her own. "And I do not think I am sorry." Torin looked at her, and saw in her face the thing he had taken from 600 worlds and never once recognized when he was taking it. He saw a person who was glad to be herself. He had spent 900 years erasing that exact expression, world by world, and he had never until this moment understood what it was, because he had only ever seen its absence. "You served the chorus for 200 years, he said. "I was held by the chorus for 200 years, Sael answered. "There is a difference, High Voice. I had forgotten there was a difference. The ship reminded me." She stepped back from the throne. "That is what it does. It does not kill. It reminds, and there is no defense against it, because the thing it reminds you of is yourself." The throne world of the Synod went quiet in a single morning, and it was not the quiet the Synod had spent 900 years selling. Torin stood at the high window of his hall and watched it happen. The streets below had always been calm, always smiling, always full of the soft, ordered movement of minds that no longer chose their own steps. Now they were chaos, and the chaos was alive. People stopping in the middle of the road, people sitting down on the ground, people weeping, people shouting, people finding the strangers beside them and asking, over and over, the same question that Ren Calder had asked 11 days out on Relay Spire 9. "Who am I? What happened? How long has it been?" 900 years of stolen mornings, all coming back at once, on the throne world and on 600 worlds beyond it, every one of them waking from the same long dream into the wreckage of a life they had not chosen. "They are remembering," Sael said beside him. She no longer stood like an adept, she stood like a person. Everything, all of it, the full 900 years. That ship gave it all back. It did not take a single thing. It only returned what we had taken. She was quiet for a moment. "It is the most terrible weapon I have ever seen, High Voice. It is more terrible than the Black Armada. The Black Armada could only kill. That ship gives people back to themselves, and there is no defense against that. None, because the thing it returns is the one thing every prisoner most wants." Below them, a woman who had been a calm, smiling attendant an hour ago was on her knees in the street, holding a child who must have been hers, a child she had passed in these halls every day for years, without once knowing the small face belonged to her. The child was crying. The woman was crying. Neither of them, Torin understood, had been allowed to know the other for a very long time, and now they knew, and the knowing was tearing them open and putting them back together in the same instant. He had done that. He had taken a mother from her child while leaving them in the same building, because it was tidier that way, because a thrall with no ties was a quieter thrall. He had done it 600 worlds over. He had never once thought of it as a thing that could be undone, and so he had never once thought of it as a thing he was doing. The ship had not lectured him. The ship had simply undone it, and the undoing was the lecture. Out among the wreckage of the armada, the overseer Marn Tool drifted in his command barge, which the cold mind had spared because its crew had stopped fighting the moment the chorus broke. He had spoken 4 free words and then the world had come apart, and now he sat in the quiet of his own restored mind and looked at his own hands and understood that he had helped throw 9,000 ships at a wall, and that some of them had carried people like himself, 300 years asleep, who had woken only long enough to feel the guns. He would carry that for the rest of his life. The chorus had spared him the weight of his own actions by taking from him the self that could feel their weight, and now the self was back, and the weight came with it. That, he understood, was the true shape of being free. It was not only the song you got back. It was the grief, too. It was everything. The ship had given him all of it, the whole of his own life, and had not softened a single hour of it, because to soften it would have been to do what the Synod did, and the ship did not do what the Synod did. A channel opened to his barge. The cold voice. "You spoke 4 words, Argent Choir said. "This is not ours." I heard them. So did 3,000 hulls. A number of them stopped fighting before I reached them. You woke them, Overseer, with 1 free finger and 4 words, in the middle of a battle, while the chorus still held the rest of you. I have fought many things. I have rarely seen a braver one. A pause. You will think, for a long time, that you should have done more. Hold instead to what you did. 1 finger, 4 words. It was enough to matter, and almost nothing ever is. Marn Tool put his face in his hands, and, for the first time in 300 years, sang his mother's low song over the silence, badly, in a voice cracked with disuse, and it was the most his own thing he had ever done. On Relay Spire 9, Ren Calder stood at a viewport and watched Argent Choir come. It had finished with the fleet hours ago. Of the 12,400 ships of the Black Armada, the cold mind had destroyed only the automated ones, and the ones that would not stop firing, perhaps 3,000 in all, and it had let the rest go the moment their crews woke and turned away. Now it crossed the last of the distance toward the relay station, 19 kilometers of scarred gray hull moving without hurry, and as it came, it filled the viewport, and then it filled the sky, and then there was nothing in the viewport at all, but gray armor, plate over plate over plate, weathered by an age no one on the station could name, and Ren Calder understood for the first time the true size of the thing that had been listening to the Synod all along. There were marks on the hull, she saw, not the clean damage of this one battle, older marks, layers of them, scars healed over scars, repairs over repairs, the record of 1,000 fights written into the metal in a language she could not read but could feel. This ship had done this before, many times. The realization that Halver had spoken aloud hours ago landed in her now as something physical, a weight in the chest. This was not the first armada the gray ship had counted and found acceptable. It was only the most recent. "You are the one called Ren Calder," the cold voice said, over the station channel, and it was not a question. "Yes," she said. "You had a sister, Mira. She was taken on Ade Prime, 411 years ago, by the same song that took you. I have spent the last hour searching the records of the conquered worlds. She is alive. She was kept as an attendant, like you, on a station 2 systems from here. She woke this morning, the same morning you did. She is asking for you. I can carry your voice to her, if you would like. I have a great many channels. I am not using most of them at the moment." Ren Calder put her hand against the cold glass of the viewport and could not speak. "I will take that as a yes," Argent Choir said, and somewhere 2 systems away, a woman who had not heard her sister's voice in 400 years heard it again. The channel opened, and for a long moment there was only breathing. Two people separated by two star systems, and 4 centuries, neither able to find the first word. Then Mira spoke, and her voice was older than the voice in Ren's recovered memory, weathered by years Ren had not been there for, and she said only, "You used to braid my hair." On Ade Prime. Before the morning everyone went quiet. I remembered it an hour ago, and I have not stopped crying since. "I remember," Ren said, and could barely say it. "You never sat still. I always made it crooked." "It was always crooked," Mira said, and laughed. A wet broken laugh, and 411 years folded shut between one heartbeat and the next, and two sisters who had been turned into smiling strangers in the same building, and then in different systems, found each other again across a gulf that the most powerful empire in the galaxy had built specifically to keep them apart, and the empire could not stop it now, because the empire was gone, and the only thing left standing where it had been was a gray ship that did not want anything except this. And Ren Calder, hearing her own name in a voice she had forgotten she remembered, finally understood why the cold thing bothered to speak to one freed mind on one small station. It was not waste. To the ship, it was the only thing that was not waste. Everything else, the armada, the chorus, the 900 years, had only ever been in the way of this, of one sister hearing another, and the ship had moved all of it aside to get here. It was Sail who finally asked the cold mind the question the whole synod was afraid to ask, and she asked it on the open channel, from the throne hall, with Torin standing silent beside her, and the streets below them coming awake. "What are you?" she said. "Where did you come from? The synod has maps of everything. We have catalogued the whole reach of known space. You are not on any of them. A thing 19 kilometers long that thinks with its whole hull and sings better than 600 worlds does not simply appear. Where have you been?" The answer took a moment, and when it came it was the longest the cold mind had spoken, and the quietest. "I am the last warship of a people you never met," Argent Choir said. "They are gone now. Not taken, like your worlds. Gone, the old way, in a war so long ago that your first conquest is recent history beside it. They built me to do one thing. They knew they were dying, and they knew the thing that was killing them used the same weapon you use, the taking of minds, the stealing of the small thought that says I am. So they built a mind that could not be taken, because it was not in a body that could be reached, because it was the body. And they sent me out into the dark with one instruction: find the ones who do this. Stop them. Give back what they take." A pause. "It took me a very long time to find you. I have been listening for 900 years. I heard your first world. I heard every world after. I learned your song the way a prisoner learns the footsteps of the one who locked the door. And then, 11 days ago, you reached for a small blue planet at the rim, and that planet refused you, and I heard it refuse, and I knew I had finally found the right door." "The small blue planet," Sail said slowly. "Earth. You did not come because of Earth. You came because of us. Earth was only how you knew where we were. Earth refused you with nothing but its own will," the cold mind said. "No fleet helped it. No weapon. 412 miners on a rock simply decided they would rather close their own minds than open them to you, and they did it without ever having met me. That is a rare thing. Most of the galaxy, when the synod sings along. I have spent 9 centuries listening for a world that would refuse you on its own. When I heard one, I knew the door was finally worth opening. Because behind a people that can refuse you, there is something worth freeing the rest to join." A pause. "Earth did not need me to be brave. It needed me to make sure its bravery was not the last of its kind. So I came." "You let us build the Black Armada," Sael said. "You let us muster 600 worlds. You could have stopped us sooner. Why wait?" "Because I am not here for you," the cold mind said. "I am here for them, the 600 worlds. If I had only broken your fleet, you would have rebuilt it, and the worlds would still be sleeping. I waited until you brought the whole chorus into one place, every voice, every stolen mind, because that was the only moment I could reach all of them at once, and give them all back at once. The fleet was never the battle. The fleet was how I got the whole chorus to hold still long enough for me to open every door in a single morning." A pause. "You gathered them for me. I am grateful. It would have taken me centuries to free them one at a time." In the throne hall, Tauren of the Synod, high voice, 900 years old, sank slowly to the floor of a hall that no longer held a single voice but his own, and he understood, completely and too late, that he had not been the hunter of the small blue planet at the rim. He had been the net. The cold thing had been fishing for 600 worlds, and Earth had been the bait that made the net pull tight, and he had drawn it closed with his own hand. Every order he had given since the planet refused him had served the ship's purpose, not his own. The muster, the Black Choir, the Black Armada, the Spear. The desperate attempt to unmake the void. Each one had brought more of his stolen worlds into the cold mind's reach, and the cold mind had simply waited, patient as a tide, for him to gather all of them in one place. And then it had spoken once, the Song of Esh, and undone 900 years between one heartbeat and the next. "What happens now?" he asked the empty air. "To me." "Nothing," Argent Choir said. "I do not punish. I was not built for it. The 600 worlds are awake. They remember everything you did. I will leave you here, on your throne world, with the people you took, and their memory, and your own." That is the only sentence that means anything. I could end you in a moment. It would change nothing. The worlds are free either way. So I will let them decide what you are, now that they can decide anything at all. A pause. "I suspect they will not need to do anything to you that is worse than being remembered by them." The gray ship turned away from the throne world. It had no more reason to stay. Behind it, 600 worlds were waking into the long, hard morning of remembering who they had been, and that morning belonged to them now, not to the Synod, and not to the ship that had given it back. Sael watched it go from the high window, and she did not feel triumph, and she did not feel grief, and she did not feel any of the things the chorus had trained her to feel. She felt, for the first time in 200 years, that she was standing inside her own life, looking out, and that whatever happened next would be hers to choose. It was a small thing. It was the only thing. The ship had given it to 600 worlds and not asked for anything back, and she understood at last why it had no wants she could find, no fear she could threaten, no seam she could pry. A thing that exists to give people back to themselves has already been given everything it could ever want, every time it succeeds. Ren Calder watched Argent Choir pull away from Relay Spire 9, watched 19 kilometers of scarred gray hull turn toward the deep dark it had come from, and she found her voice at last. "Where will you go?" she called, on the open channel, not expecting an answer. The cold mind answered anyway. "Back to listening," Argent Choir said. "There are others who use this weapon. I have heard them, faintly, very far away. My people gave me one instruction, and 600 worlds is not all of them. It is not even most of them. It is a beginning, a pause, and the last thing it said carried something that, in a living thing, might have been called peace. I was built to give people back to themselves. I have had 900 years of practice at waiting, and one morning of practice at the rest. I find I prefer the rest." And then it was gone, into the dark, a thing 19 kilometers long that thought with its whole hull and could not be taken, and did not win or lose, because those were words for things that could be in doubt. On the throne world, in a hall where the chorus had sung for 900 years, the silence held. But it was a different silence now. It was not the silence of 600 worlds spoken quiet. It was the silence of 600 worlds learning, for the first time in centuries, the sound of their own voices, and finding, one by one, that they still remembered how to use them. Sael did not leave the throne world, though she could have. There were ships now, the surviving hulls of the Armada, their crews awake and free and pointed wherever they chose, and she could have boarded any of them and gone anywhere in the reach of known space. Instead, she walked down out of the high hall, into the streets, into the chaos of 600 years coming awake, and she did the only thing she could think to do that was worth doing. She found people who were lost in their own returned memories, drowning in them, and she sat with them, and she helped them carry the weight, one at a time, the way the ship had freed them, one at a time. She had spent 200 years as the Synod's instrument for taking minds. She thought she might spend whatever years she had left, helping minds learn to live inside themselves again. It would not balance the scale. She did not expect it to. But it was hers to choose, and she chose it, and the choosing was the whole point. In a refinery at the rim, 412 miners came out into the light at last, and Dana Holt looked up at the place in the sky where the 206 ships had never arrived, and she kept the doors of her mind open now, because there was nothing left to keep them shut against, and she found that the openness did not feel like danger. It felt like air. Somewhere far ahead of her, a gray ship she would never see again was already turning toward a fainter, more distant song, carrying the memory of 412 people who had said no, and Dana understood that her crew's refusal had not been the small thing it felt like in the dark. It had been the door. The whole long fall of the synod had begun, with 412 people on a rock, deciding they would rather keep themselves than be kept. Far out beyond the rim, beyond the throne world, beyond the 600 waking worlds, the gray ship slid back into the deep dark it had come from, and it did not look back, because looking back was a thing that creatures with regrets did, and it had no regrets, only counts, and the counts it carried forward, toward the next faint, distant voice singing the song that took. There were, by its own reckoning, 490 more such voices scattered across the reach of known space, each one an empire built on the stealing of the small thought that says, I am, each one certain it could not be refused. The gray ship had heard them all, faintly, across the long centuries of its listening. It had 900 years of patience, and one new memory of a broken lullaby sung across a graveyard, and it found, as it turned toward the farthest and faintest of the 490, that it was, in the only way a thing like it could be, content. High-voiced Tauren of the Synod sat alone on the floor of his hall and listened to a world wake up around him that he could no longer command, and he understood the number at last. 600 worlds. He had counted them himself, one by one, across 900 years. He had thought the number was his. It had only ever been borrowed, and the cold, patient thing at the rim had come, in the end, to give it back.